Future Population Growth by Max Roser. This article was first published in 2014. It was last revised in November 2019. Source: OurWorldInData.org. The number of people in the world increased more than fourfold during the 20th century. What will the future look like? Summary: the UN projects that the global population increases from a population of 7.7 billion in 2019 to 11.2 billion by the end of the century. By that time, the UN projects, fast global population growth will come to an end. Beneath the global level, there are of course, big differences between different world regions and countries. While in some regions the world population will likely grow rapidly for the coming decades, other regions will continue to see declining population numbers. Global population growth is determined by the number of births and deaths. Improving health is increasing the size of the population as it is decreasing mortality. The countervailing trend are falling fertility rates. The trend of couples having fewer children is what brought rapid population growth to an end in many countries already, and what will bring an end to rapid population growth globally. The global population growth rate has already slowed down considerably. It reached its peak at over 2% in the late 1960s and has been falling since. The UN projections for the global population growth rates, which have been produced since the 1950s, have a good track record in projecting the size of the global population. While the UN projections are most widely known, there are other very carefully produced projections. The demographers of WCESA model what will happen according to different scenarios and make clear that the population growth rate tomorrow depends on what we do today. Rapid progress in getting children and especially girls into schools will result in a much smaller global population. The biggest disagreement between different projections is concerning the future of Africa. While the UN projects a 3.5-fold increase of the population of Africa, other researchers find a much smaller increase more likely. Topic 1: Global population growth. Subtopic: 2 centuries of rapid global population growth will come to an end. One of the big lessons from the demographic history of countries is that population explosions are temporary. For many countries the demographic transition has already ended, and as the global fertility rate has now halved, we know that the world as a whole is approaching the end of rapid population growth. This visualization presents this big overview of the global demographic transition with the very latest data from the UN Population Division just published. As we explore at the beginning of the entry on population growth, the global population grew only very slowly up to 1,700, only 0.04% per year. In the many millennia up to that point in history, very high mortality of children counteracted high fertility. The world was in the first stage of the demographic transition. Once health improved and mortality declined, things changed quickly. Particularly over the course of the 20th century, over the last 100 years global population more than quadrupled. As we see in the chart, the rise of the global population got steeper and steeper, and you have just lived through the steepest increase of that curve. This also means that your existence is a tiny part of the reason why that curve is so steep. The 7-fold increase of the world population over the course of 2 centuries amplified humanity's impact on the natural environment. To provide space, food, and resources for a large world population in a way that is sustainable into the distant future is without question one of the large, serious challenges for our generation. We should not make the mistake of underestimating the task ahead of us. Yes, I expect new generations to contribute, but for now it is upon us to provide for them. Population growth is still fast. Every year 140 million are born and 58 million die. The difference is the number of people that we add to the world population in a year, 82 million. Where do we go from here? In red you see the annual population growth rate, that is, the percentage change in population per year, of the global population. It peaked around half a century ago. Peak population growth was reached in 1968 with an annual growth of 2.1%. Since then the increase of the world population has slowed and today grows by just over 1% per year. This slowdown of population growth was not only predictable, but predicted. Just as expected by demographers, Here, the world as a whole is experiencing the closing of a massive demographic transition. This chart also shows how the United Nations envision the slow ending of the global demographic transition. As population growth continues to decline, the curve representing the world population is getting less and less steep. By the end of the century, when global population growth will have fallen to 0.1% according to the UN's projection, the world will be very close to the end of the demographic transition. It is hard to know the population dynamics beyond 2100, it will depend upon the fertility rate, and as we discuss in our entry on fertility rates here, fertility is first falling with development and then rising with development. The question will be whether it will rise above an average 2 children per woman. The world enters the last phase of the demographic transition, and this means we will not repeat the past. The global population has quadrupled over the course of the 20th century, but it will not double anymore over the course of this century. The world population will reach a size, which compared to humanity's history, will be extraordinary. If the UN projections are accurate, they have a good track record. The world population will have increased more than tenfold over the span of 250 years. We are on the way to a new balance. The big global demographic transition that the world entered more than 2 centuries ago is then coming to an end. This new equilibrium is different from the one in the past, when it was the very high mortality that kept population growth in check. In the new balance, it will be low fertility keeps population changes small. Subtopic: the UN population projection by country and world region until 2100. The chart shows the change of the total population since 1950, and from 2015 it shows the UN population projection until the end of the century. This interactive visualization you can change to any other country or world region. By switching to the map view, you can explore the projection of the distribution of the global population. As we see here, there is a significant fall in the population growth rate, particularly in the second half of the 21st century. Although the world population is still rising at the end of the century, it's doing so very slowly. We would therefore expect growth to come to an end very soon after 2100. In this projection, the world population will be around 10.88 billion in 2100, and we would therefore expect peak population to occur early in the 22nd century, at not much more than 10.88 billion.